Hey there, listeners. Welcome to episode 650. My guest is called Joe Pane, and he's an expert in human behavior, and he's a degree qualified in psychology and also sociology. He's a best-selling author of a book called Courage to Be You, Your Guide to Mastering Uncertainty. But he's been working in the field since about 2006, and he's the creator of a formula called Emotional Fitness Formula. We had a great discussion, and some things that he talked about was do something that makes your soul sing. And I thought, this is really cool. But he talked about the consistency of message, consistency of character, and that consistency builds and maintains trust. Listeners, this is an awesome interview with Joe, so sit back and enjoy.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. Great to have you here with us. I've got an awesome guest with me today. His name is Joe Pane. Joe, welcome to you.
Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Now, whereabouts in the world are you today?
We're over in Noosa in the sunny coast, so we're just located in the Noosa hinterland.
So for those who are listening around the world, that's based in Australia. So whereabouts in Australia when you say on which side?
Southeast Queensland, so the southeast border of Australia, or the coastline, I should say, not border. Coastline.
Yeah. Yeah. If you haven't been there, listeners, it's a beautiful place to go to. Highly recommend it. And you're living in Avery, I think you said?
No. What I meant by Avery is that because we're in the hinterland, there's bird life that's very rich here. So there's always something going on.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful place to be. Very good. Now, I'm giving an introduction to you a little bit, but you're an expert in human behavior, and you've got a degree in psychology and sociology. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
And you're a best-selling author of a book called Courage to Be You, Your Guide to Mastering Uncertainty. Wow, we have a lot of uncertainty in the world, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you've been working in the field since 2006, and that's probably about when you and I probably met each other in one of the events that we went to many, many years ago with Dale, and I think it was Sydney, I think it was. I think possibly,
Yeah.
if it's memory-wise. Yeah, so it was many, many years ago. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background, what you've done, what you do today, and just so our listeners can understand a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's right, Dennis. We did meet around that time. And then I think we reconnected again many, many years later. Funnily enough, at I think another one of Dale's events as well. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've been delivering workshops and doing group coaching and running corporate retreats and speaking at the odd conference for the last 18 years. Specifically, the last 4 or 5 years, as a result of the culmination of all that work, I created the Emotional Fitness Formula, which its pure purpose is to transform people's relationship with uncertainty. And that's been a big part of my work. And another big part of my work over 14 of the last 18 years has been my behavioral profiling. So all the stuff I do around behavioral profiling, utilizing an instrument known as extended disc. So I've accredited several thousand coaches in that instrument as well. So yeah.
Yeah. When you say extended disc, because I know that a lot of people know about disc, but what's the extended piece about it? How's it different?
Yeah, good question. So there's dozens and dozens of disc models out in the marketplace. Most of them are purely and only personality profiling based. The e-disc is personality profiling and behavioral profiling. So the massive difference is that the behavioral profiling side taps into the unconscious, emotional themes. And I believe the most important thing of all is understanding your energetic spread. So how it is that you actually not only utilize your energy, but how to best manage your energy in all aspects of life. Because I think without energy management, you can't do other things like time management, for example. So energy management is everything.
Brilliant. I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because I think there's one thing a lot of leaders need to understand is about energy. I talk about leaders people not wanting to work for a knuckle dragger. And that is because some people don't actually have a lot of energy So that's one aspect. But I think there's other things that you're talking about in relation to energy. In a life that's really a lot happening for a lot of us, how important is the energy? What should people be looking out for as a leader when they're in their day-to-day stuff, they're stuck in the weeds in the midst of things? What are some things that they should be aware of, should be looking out for in relation to their energy?
Well, one of the gifts of having an accurate appreciation of your behavioral profile is where you understand how your energetic spread or your energetic profile. So in other words, some people work extremely well in isolation. They don't want to be with other people. They need to be left alone. And that's how their psychic or energetic batteries remain high. Other people need to be amongst people. So for example, I might be doing an admin task on my laptop for maybe a couple of hours, but I know that with my profile, I need to be amongst it. I need to have energy around me and people around me. So to be in an office that's communal or it's got lots of activity keeps me focused. Where there's other people that would be a significant distraction and they would need to be, as I said, just isolated away. That's one example. There's literally dozens and dozens and dozens of energetic patterns that if we were to become aware of it within ourselves and also know how our team members, what their profiles are, for example, would be able to navigate and help them manage their energy more consistently. Because as we know, the moment your energy levels drop, and we're not talking physical, it's more psychological. It's focusing energy, it's adapting energy, it's psychological energy rather than just the pure physical of exhaustion because you've done lots of exercise. I'm talking more psychological and mental. So if a leader if it's a blind spot for them that they're not aware of the energetic spread of their team and how every team member is actually what suits them in terms of an environment, what suits them in terms of not just the environment, but how they're spoken to, how they're treated, how they are led. All of them are different. And I believe that this is a fundamental, crucial cornerstone tool and skill to have as a leader is to know how your team operates from that space.
Yeah. I think I love this whole topic. I think it's really cool. We're probably going to be speaking for hours, or we're not going to, but I know it's fascinating in the sense that for a lot of people, they struggle day in. It's just they don't understand where their spread is. You're calling it the energetic spread. If they knew that and they could work better, more effectively, wow, they'd be a totally different person. They'd be a great leader to work with. But yeah, it's really interesting. Now, question here I've got for you is that we've been talking about, it's more about leadership and change today. For you, how did you get into leadership?
Well, it depends on how we define it, because I believe that as a parent, you're a leader. I believe that when I started my coaching and training business back in '06, I found myself in front of lots of different rooms. So that's how I found myself in a leadership position, or loosely termed an authority position, because you're in the room delivering a workshop and navigating or directing the direction of the conversation. So, or where the room is headed. So I found myself in that position, I guess by default. I wasn't consciously thinking I'm going to now be leading rooms. I just
Mm,
knew that I wanted to work with people and I wanted to work in a proactive space, because my first professional job straight out of uni was working as a rehab counselor at Ford Motor Company. And and this is in the manufacturing part of Ford, where they used to produce the Ford Falcon over in Broadmeadows in Victoria in Melbourne. And it was a pungent, toxic, political, worst of the worst sort of environments I've ever been involved in. And so, having barely survived there for 2.5 years, I was really keen. I knew I wanted to be with people. I knew that, and be with people in a meaningful and valuable way, evaluating way. So, coaching and training business was my attempt at, and fortunately for me, it worked out. It was my attempt at being in a more proactive, more positive, more resourcefully driven environment. So, I guess with that transition over time, professionally, I found myself in leadership positions where I'm running rooms or I'm directing literally the focus of a room for a day or multiple days.
I actually think leadership is about facilitation, really. I think that we are there to facilitate discussions, facilitate thinking, strategy, things like that. And I think that being a facilitator, trainer slash coach is something that you bring that sort of skill set out a lot more. It'd be great to see leaders actually learning that more themselves, even just in a in a
Well,
meeting, right?
spot on, Dennis. And just to add to that, because you make a good point, is that I think whether it's a person that's in my position or whether it's a leader of an organization or leader of a team, essentially to me, the core definition of leadership is making people better people, regardless of
Yeah.
the industry, regardless of the context. That is, to me, the purest intention of a great leader.
When you're out there with people, talking to people today, working with leaders or business owners, entrepreneurs, whoever you're working with, what's one or two of the things that they're tending to struggle with most nowadays?
Well, there's lots of things because human behavior is very, very complex. So people are dealing with all kinds of things, from complexities of what's going on at home with maybe their children or what's going on in their marriage. There's an eclectic bucket load of issues and problems that different people will experience. The beautiful thing about the emotional fitness work is that even though the work is designed to transform your relationship with uncertainty, it's how it's done. So it's removing yourself from the drama of the moment or the micro moment of what's going on with that particular team member or what's going on at home, and really taking a bigger picture view in terms of who you are as a person. How do you define yourself? That has a big impact on how you relate to uncertainty. Having clarity on where you're at on the journey from ambition to meaning. Is your life purely and absolutely about you, or is it also about other people and your contribution to that? There's also clarity of knowing what brings you joy, your values, understanding what is it that you can do in your life that are activities that bring you that joy. Because a value is an emotional compass or an expression of a deep desire. So I think having clarity on what matters, what doesn't matter, and also having commitment to expressions of those values through different activities is really, really important. Emotional flexibility. So having the psychological tools to adapt to the demands of different situations, and also creating a very healthy perspective, because a clean and healthy perspective is needed when you need to come out of that micro moment or putting out that fire, because that clean and healthy perspective will help you see more clearly and help you navigate with more direction through the forest of uncertainty. So that's really important, I think, as a leader, is to be emotionally fit.
Yeah, good. Excellent. And I like how you talk about emotional fit, because I talk about being match fit. And that is, but that's not just the emotional, it's the physical side as well, fitness too. How important do you think it is for people to, because I actually think that, yeah, you mentioned the home life and then maybe with things there. I think that sometimes leaders are going home overwhelmed and there's a lot going on for them. So they're not very nice to live with. And then at home, if things aren't right, then they're carrying that into the workplace as well. So there's that vicious circle. Are you seeing that as well, that it plays into both parts?
Oh, absolutely. And this is why it's really important that, this is one of my philosophies of living that seems to work well for most people that I've known about this. And that is that I think it's really important to discover for yourself a hobby that you can do that makes your soul sing. It's something that you do purely for yourself, and it becomes an expression of you that operates independently of all the complexities of life, whether it's family life, business life, leadership life, whatever aspects of your life bring complexity into your life. You need to have a healthy escape, whether it's a musical hobby, a creative hobby, an intellectual hobby, a physical hobby, whatever it might be. I know for a fact that back in 2006, when I went from being an employee for 10 years and starting my business, so being fully responsible for creating of every dollar that came in instead of just being on a salary. And this is not to minimize people on salaries, of course, but to start your own business is a different, it's a different landscape. And I know that for me, running, because I've been a runner for many, many years, is having a community of runners, running by myself, running with that community, running with a coach, doing all those different things 3, 4, 5 times a week, gave me that stability, that comfort, that familiarity, that certainty, that security even, that I could do that every single week, that provided reference points of what was familiar. So during the day, I could handle more effectively all of the uncertainty that starting a new career in a new business brings. Whereas I just can't imagine how I would have navigated those first 2 or 3 years if I didn't have something like running or any other hobby that was meaningful to me or to anyone else. And hence the reason why I think this is important. I don't think a hobby is something that you just go and do and people go, oh, that's a little bit selfish. It's like, well, try reverse engineering that and have nothing in your life that brings you something to look forward to every week. And if you don't have something that you're looking forward to every week, relationship with uncertainty is going to become even more unresourcefully amplified, and you're not going to be able to handle the continual challenges that life brings.
There you go, listeners. Do something that makes your soul sing.
Mm.
I think Joe's hit the nail on the head there. I think it's brilliant and what you're sharing there, because We got to have something to release, something to go out there and do something different. And we look forward to, as you're saying, which is brilliant. Joe, now you may have several here. This person could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
My favorite leader, well, I don't have a favorite leader, but one of the top ones would have to be the head coach, the senior coach of the Collingwood Football Club in the AFL. So I've been following the AFL for some time, the Australian Football League. So that's like Aussie rules here in Australia. And the team that won the premiership, or what other people might call the championship, or whatever you want to call it, last year, this fellow, Craig McRae, what I love is I follow him quite closely with all of his press conferences. I've watched him navigate dark times with the team, obviously the victory of winning everything, all of the challenges that come before him. And what I love about him is he's a genuine expression of making people better people. He puts care for who the team member is becoming ahead of their performance. Now, is their performance important? Of course it is. If their performance drops off significantly, they're not going to play on the team. So it's not like care takes over and you treat everyone literally like, well, he's my son, so he's going to play regardless. It's not like that at all. But he is a very healthy, resourceful, robust expression of care. And he's continually focusing with his team, sure, this strategy, because when it comes to AFL or any elite sport, it's like 0.5%, if that separates you physically and from a fitness perspective to your competitors. The massive difference is in mindset and also in culture and also in how well gelled the relationships are in that team. And what I adore about him and I respect deeply in him is that he's continually focusing on two things, or I'm sure there's more than two things, but there's two key things he's focusing on. One is he's focusing on who do we want to be as a group, as people, as a performer out in the field. And so whenever the team falls away or loses a couple of matches, it's the strategy's already there in terms of what you need to do and where you need to be on the field. That's all fundamental stuff. If you haven't got those fundamental skills, you're not going to be on the team. So that's a given. But it's the energy used that day, the application of effort, the focusing, the having your eyes on the bigger prize, meaning not the premiership, but, as a team, not focusing just on self. So he's continually focusing on who they're becoming. The other thing he focuses on is, are we better than yesterday? It doesn't matter how micro the progress is, but as long as we're progressing in how we gel as a team, but also progressing as people. And and I think that's a very, very important thing. I think it's crucial. Again, I was sharing with some of my clients last week in a workshop, if you want to really do a thought experiment on whether a psychological standpoint is accurate, all you need to do is reverse engineer it out of the scenario and see if it makes any difference. We'll take care and connection and getting better every day, take that out of any team environment and just go purely on strategy and purely on skill. Good luck. It's not going to work because the team's inevitably going to be faced with challenges. That's a guarantee. Inevitably, the team's going to lose matches. That's inevitable. It's then how do you pick up the pieces from those losses? And the way that you do it is through essence of who you're becoming, who you want to be, the standards of behavior, standards of engagement, connection, all those wonderful things I've just been saying. So he only took over the team in 2022. So, I've never watched the coach so closely, and literally every press conference he has done, I have watched because I'm fascinated to see how he manages and handles and navigates some of the tough questions from the media when it comes to tough times. And it's fascinating to watch. And I adore, because something I really respect in people like him and others like him is their consistency of message. And their consistency of message is not just a message. It's a consistency of character that I absolutely adore. And that's something that I think is lacking in a lot of leadership these days. Like that is a big gap for a lot of people.
In other words, one day they turn up one way, another next month they're turning up a different way, and they're not always showing up the same. But I like it, the consistency of messages or message and of character as well. Now, I know you said about that if you took the care and so forth out of the equation, it was just around strategy and that sort of stuff. Good luck. I think that's where AI is a bit like that too. I think it's going to miss that care, that side of things as well, although it's growing so much. And so we'll see where it goes. Have you actually had, if you were to sit on a park bench with Craig, having a coffee, the two of you, would be one question you would love to ask him?
That's a great question. I haven't thought about this. Let me just reflect. What would I ask him? there's several questions. I'm just trying to pick one here, Dennis, so I don't usually take the next 50 minutes sharing all the questions I would ask. One question I would ask would be, what would you regard as crucial or significant habits that you have ingrained in your weekly, and I'm not talking habits that are directly related to the strategy of the field, but what are habits that you regard as crucial or significant in you remaining focused on progress, on you remaining on song with your progression? Like Earl Nightingale used to say, I loved Earl Nightingale's definition of success. To me is the most complete, which is progressively realizing your worthy ideal. So I would ask him, what are your habits to help you progressively realize the worthy ideal of who you are as a person? Because one of the things that he said is that there is no top of the mountain. There is no line to reach. There is no standard to reach. There is no such thing. There is no line. There is no beyond the premiership. There is no, we've made it. There's no arrival. It's a continual evolutionary attitude in terms of, so I would ask him, what are some cornerstone habits that express within yourself every week that enables that? I'd be curious to know. Because there would have to be. There would have to be.
Can you go and have that conversation with them, please? I think that'd be great to know. Very good. Yeah. All right. So the title of, or the statement I'm going to say is Leadership is Changing. That's the name of the podcast. When I mentioned that, what does it mean for you?
Well, I think generationally, as we pass through different generations, leadership changes in the sense that it's becoming more, well, it's now already relationship focused. Well, it's not like that everywhere in all industries. There's quite a few industries that are not quite there yet. But I think as we're moving into the next generation, and even from my generation compared to my father's generation, like even looking at that difference, my generation is more relationship focused and person focused and connection focused. And I think that that's just going to continue. Well, who knows what's going to happen in the future? No one knows anything, but I think that that's going to continue because we've seen that kind of person-centered, relationship-centered, connection-centered way of leading creates meaning. And again, reverse engineer these things out of any leadership strategy, and you're certainly not going to have consistency. And I don't think you do very well. Whereas in the past, in previous generation, just one generation ago being my dad, it was all very much do as I say. And it was very much focused on, how do I put it, to focusing, on strategy, but focusing on the things that need to be done rather than, there was no conversation about who are you becoming back then.
Yep.
It was all about what you were doing. So,
yeah, and it is definitely changing, but also people are needing to be more aware of it and then work on it as well. Some people say to me, oh, is that all that fluffy tree hugging kind of stuff? And I go, you know what? At the end of the day, we're all human beings, and that's why we're here, and we're here doing certain things. And if you take the human being element out of it, then what? So we've got to be mindful of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been issues, the 2-year period with the pandemic, et cetera, that brought to the fore what has always been there. All of the anxiety and depression issues and violence issues and bullying issues that are genuine, because that word bullying is overused. All of these scenarios, these aggressive scenarios that we hear about in different work environments and toxic environments, they have always been there. And the pandemic brought those to the forefront of our minds and amplified what was already there. So when you have a leader in there that doesn't care for who you're becoming and doesn't care for you as a person, in partnership with, of course, getting stuff done and getting results, of course, I don't think that kind of leader would be able to connect or get the results that he would want or she would want from the newer generation. So
absolutely. And I think there's the flip side as well, what you were alluding to there as well. I think there's those who want to just do the care side, but they forget that they've got a business to run, or there's things that they need to customers and so forth. We can't forget that. We can't drop the ball there because we've got a business to run.
Well, it's a balance. But, you've got to keep your eye on the dashboard. It's really crucial. In every day or every week that I experience life and my work, different days have different priorities. Some days the priority is making money. Other days it's doing activities that don't make money, like taking care of a client, spending time with someone that needs to have some time spent with them, or getting on a Zoom call with a group of leaders that have got some issues. And these aren't necessarily income producing things, but then there's other days where it's like, okay, we're going to focus on getting some scores on the board. It's the balancing act. So
I think there's another element too, is about you being creative, about you creating new programs, things like that. Okay,
that's right.
they'll bring in revenue later on, but it's about that creative side. And then there's the other pieces, which is looking after yourself, going out and exercising,
Mm,
meditating,
yeah,
doing all that good stuff as
exactly.
well. Yeah, yeah. And as you say, it's the balance, right,
Mm.
across the board. Now, we talking about before about uncertainty. If we think about uncertainty and we think about technology, business, data, social, it all seems to be getting faster and faster. So, how can a leaders be successful in today's fast paced, ever changing world? What do you think they should be thinking about doing in addition to what you've already said?
Well, that's why all the person centered, all the stuff I've been talking about around connection and relationship matters more than ever because of the technology being so fast, because we are so easily distracted. Gee, to give an example, if I, when I'm working on something, if I'm writing or if I'm having a conversation like this, the phone either goes and there's a basket up here on my library here that just disappears, and I put the phone in there. I'll leave the phone in there for hours. And because if I have it by my side, that little dark screen is just begging to be touched. So you can see if there's anything else that's come up that you need to be aware of. It is such an easy void to be sucked into. And what happens, especially with the younger folk, they get emotionally affected. All of us, if we watch the wrong things for long enough, become emotionally affected by what we see on the screens. This is where I think it's a delicate sort of thing of balance two things. One is that so you need to have that care factor that we've been talking about. And the second thing is having some basic, fundamental, easy to perform strategies on how to manage that. So whether you turn the internet off when you don't need to access it because you're writing something or you're creating something, or whether you're in a meeting and the phone needs to just simply, or you're on emails or whatever you're doing, but the phone needs to just simply go away. I think physically removing social media in the form of the phone or whatever it might be for 5 minutes, 5 hours, for a day, or whatever the context is, I think is a really easy solution. Because in psychology, we know that one of the critical thinking principles of life is that what you start focusing on ceases to exist in your experience. So if the phone is not in your conscious awareness, obviously you're aware that's on the shelf over there somewhere. But what I mean is it's not within your conscious awareness of your everyday reach when you're focusing on something, that you're severely minimizing, massively minimizing the probabilities of you being taken over by your screen. So
Yeah.
I think that's really key. Here at home, we've got 16-year-old twin boys, and it's been a given basic standard that no screens go into their bedrooms when they go to bed at night. That's it. And that's a pretty basic thing, but that's not common in a lot of families, for example. It's the other way around. When we're at the dinner table, we all eat together. We don't have screens on the table unless it's an extenuating circumstance. But extenuating circumstances are rare. So, and then other times in the day, we're all on the screens doing whatever we're doing, whether I'm watching something or doing work, or whether my sons are playing on their games or my wife is reading a book on it, whatever she does. We have those moments, of course, but the boundaries are very, very clearly defined. And I think these boundaries can be translated into the working life as well, into the working environment as
Yeah.
well. It's just having a standard that everyone agrees to that is reasonably easy to attain.
And this is what I like about Apple is that I can, on my Mac, I can go to focus work time and just put it on do not disturb, phone, iPad, the whole lot, and I can just focus. It's really good. Even my TV, Apple TV, we changed the password on some things. Well, I can't change the password on that because I've lost the remote. So I haven't even bothered to fix it. Can't be bothered now. We just, if we want to watch something, I hook the laptop and the TV to watch something that we might want to watch, like the rugby or things like that. Other than that, not worrying about it right now.
Yeah.
Stop watching all the news
Yeah.
over the last few years. What I found as well on social media, X or Twitter, what do you want to call it?
Mm.
It's quite toxic in that environment. And I've just noticed how it actually affected me. So I got rid of it, just
Yes.
logging out of it, staying away from it, right? So yeah, it's very important stuff, but it all takes discipline to do it, right? And building those habits and making sure that and I think it's about you being more deliberate about doing it.
Yeah. I think the social media has its massive positives. There's two significant positives that come to my mind, though, in flipping what we're talking about. I agree completely with what you're saying. Is that one is that I was just saying this to my wife the other day. Social media has allowed, like things like Facebook, has allowed us to stay in touch with people from our past. Like my old colleagues from my real estate days in the 90s, we're in touch now because of Facebook. I've regained connection with some of my old high school friends and early university
Yep.
school year friends. And I love that because sometimes their feed comes up and there's a photo of what they've been doing on the weekend with their kid or something like that. And it's like, it's just nice. It's beautiful. So that's a good thing. The other side of it is things like X, for example. I've got an account, but I don't use it. But I look at it sometimes because I'm also a money guy. I love investing and saving money and all that sort of stuff. So there's certain money markets and certain aspects of the financial world that I focus on. And so my feed is the algorithm is very much conditioned to feed me things on what's going on around certain monetary policy and a whole bunch of other things, which I love doing. It's one of my little sort of intellectual hobbies is the money stuff. So my X feed is very financially driven because of the nature of the algorithm that I've created, that I've created because of the nature of my pattern of search. And once in a while, some weird ass thing will come up in my feed. You're tempted to tap it, and I don't because that then tells the algorithm, oh, he wants more of this, horrible stuff. So I just don't tap it, and it just doesn't come up as much. So I find that social media from my interest in money markets is very useful, and also very useful from a broader social perspective in keeping in touch with people from past lives, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Totally. It's very good. Now, we've been talking about things from a leadership lens. If we were to change lens now and think about it from an employee's perspective, how has employee expectations of leaders changed?
That's a difficult question for me to answer because I haven't really delved deep into that from that side.
Although you get to work with leaders though, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they may share some.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. So I think a lot of, I like to refer to them as team members because that's what different people are. We are team members to different groups. I think that there's a definite priority on having a safe environment, an environment where you can appropriately express yourself because it's not about fully expressing your opinions on every contentious issue on the planet. It's about being able to express yourself in the context of what the team is doing or what the market that you're working in is doing or the community that you're involved in is doing. I think that there's definitely that there's a fundamental conscious demand on a safe environment to be able to express yourself. That's an important thing that I've noticed. The other one is that, and it circles back to one of the points we made earlier, Dennis, and that is about consistency. You brought up the point that some leaders show up in as different characters every day. It's that consistency is something that whether team members are consciously aware of it or not, are thriving for because consistency, again, is one of those core ingredients of trust. If you reverse engineer that and take consistency out of any form of trust, how can you have trust without consistency? So I think that's something that's very valuable. And I also think that having meaningful connections with team members, fellow team members is something. So if depending on what kind of business you're in and what kind of market you're dealing with, if you've got a team of people, I think having that outlet for people to connect, to be able to express in a safe environment their opinions on how things could be done better or what we need to stop doing or doing less of. And also that consistency of messaging and consistency of, hey, Dennis, for example, if you and I were running a team and we said, listen, we've got this new meeting that's really important that we look at some KPIs for about 20 minutes at 2:00 every Thursday. Then at 2:00 every Thursday, you and I need to be ready and be there because I've been involved in organizations where they create a new structure to their structure, which might be this 2:00 KPI touch base every Thursday. And then at 2:30 on the next Thursday, nothing's happened. And someone texts you at 3 and says, oh, we're going to meet now. And it's like all this inconsistency. And suddenly it's like, I've got no investment in being in this meeting because if they can't be consistent with something as basic as 2:00 every Thursday, then what's the point of making commitments to other things that are more complex? So consistency is massive, and that's a key core ingredient of trust. So trust, safe to express yourself, and connection. I think these are the things that all team members, all employees would want in their environment.
So would you say consistency builds trust? Or
Yeah, both.
Yeah,
It builds trust and it maintains trust.
nice. Nice. I'm writing notes. Listeners, hope you are. It's pretty good. So consistency is a huge thing too. Even this podcast, the consistency of 3 episodes every week and keep doing it. And I've said it on other episodes. There's been times I'm like, oh, going to do another episode. But you know what? I've had to do it, and I wanted to do it because the listeners are expecting it. It's the same with you building a business. If you're consistently showing up with a client, that's important. But if you're consistently not showing up in the sense that you're changing, it's going back to what you said before about consistent around the message, it's about the character, but it's also about if you keep changing things, well, that's what you're doing consistently, then that's what they're looking at you as well as your part of your brand that you're known
Yes.
for, that you're consistently not showing up or changing all the time.
Yeah, and a final point on consistency is to not get it confused with perfection. They're two completely different things. So
Sure.
two completely different things. Perfection is a whole nother conversation. So that's not to be confused. That's a really important point to add.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Joe, if I was to get you to get your crystal ball out now and think about the future, where do you see leadership being in 5 years?
I think the fundamentals of what we've discussed will never go away. Sure, it'll be fascinating to see how technology and AI affects that. But up until this point in time, as far as I'm aware, AI is not conscious. If AI becomes conscious, well, that's going to be
Mm.
scary and fascinating. But
Sure.
I think the fundamentals of human connection, regardless, all the things we've been talking about here, Dennis, I think in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I don't think those things are going to go away. So as a mentor of mine said to me a long time ago, and I love this, he said, high touch will never be completely replaced by high tech.
It's massive indeed. Joe, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today. If our listeners are wanting to get hold of you, where should they go?
Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate that. Yeah, so they can go to my website, so at joepane.com.au, and across all socials from Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm on TikTok now, my God. All of those are on the handle at Joe Pane Insights. The same handle for all of them, and you'll be able to find me on those.
Yep. So listeners, what we'll do is we'll put those into the show notes, check them out, and you'll be able to go to those different links. But Joe, once again, it's been a great time talking with you. So thank you so much for this conversation, but also everything that you're doing as well in the marketplace. Keep it up. It's been awesome. So thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Much appreciated.
Excellent. Well, there you go, listeners. The emotional fitness formula is something that you need to think about because we may have some blind spots in our energetic spread. But you know what? Can you have a consistency in around your messaging and also around your character? Because consistency builds and maintains trust. Hey, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.